Guys, whatever we think about Belal, remember the name Muhammad, we have to give him props for accepting to fight the absolute boogeyman of this division for his first title defense. Whatever you think about his fight style, I'm going to be the first one to say I'm not necessarily a fan of his style, not the most entertaining, fan-friendly style, but he's willing to fight anyone. And how confident he is in his abilities is what's taken him so far, and where he's ended up as the UFC welterweight champion. When you become the champion, there is no easy fights. Belal isn't a guy who's necessarily gotten really any easy fights coming up anyway, so he's no stranger to a tough fight. This is going to be a super tough fight though. When we talk about surging contenders, I used the term boogeyman before. Tony Ferguson was called the boogeyman. He was running through guys. It's no different with Shavkat Rhakmonov. The guy has an 100% finish rate, which is one of the scariest things. 18-0, all finishes. He was supposed to be in a matchup, a number one contenders fight with JDM, Jack Della Maddalena, who unfortunately was injured. Rachmanov's probably heard that and goes, no worries, I'm going to wait for the shot. He sees Belal is the new, and he probably really favors himself in that matchup. So it's going to be a crazy clash of styles. I think everyone's going to write off Belal Muhammad again, like they do. But stylistically, he can have some success. Rachmanov does make mistakes, and we've never really seen him tested and taken into deep waters cardio-wise. So that's what makes this fight so intriguing. Rachmanov, he is so exciting to watch. His style, like I said, he only ever brings you a finish. So super interesting fight. I can't wait to see him get his crack at the title. In the co-main event, Kai Asakura, the Ryzen champion, is making his debut, and he's getting a crack at the champion, Alexandra Pantoja, for the flyweight strap, in his first fight in the UFC. What a crazy debut. It only speaks to how shallow this division is, unfortunately. You had Muhammad Mokaev, someone who was streaking, up and coming, looked like the next contender in the rankings, and Dana White, in hilarious Dana White fashion, doesn't like him personally and just decides to cut him. So you have a division which needs contenders, and Dana White goes, nah, we're not interested here. Hilarious. So this fight comes out of the blue. Asakura, we knew had signed with the UFC. He's a super entertaining fighter, likes to strike, but is very well-rounded also. You can't avoid talking about what it feels like your first fight in the UFC. We've seen guys come across from huge organizations, outside of the UFC, champions outside of the UFC, come in and absolutely crumble under that pressure. And that's just fighting an unranked guy or a guy in the top 10 or 15. So coming in and fighting Pantoja, who's at the top of his game, it is a huge ask. Could you imagine if the Japanese kid comes in here, brings all his fans from Ryzen, and just collects the UFC belt as well? I think regardless if he wins or loses, it's going to be a super interesting fight. Pantoja is going to want to shoot because Asakura has some nasty stuff on the feet. Going to be a really interesting fight because Pantoja is known to have a brawl. He loves to stand there and trade. Although one of his biggest attributes, why he has remained the champion, is his ability to win rounds and be strategic. So that is something that Asakura is really up against, I think, in this matchup. And a couple more fights that should have happened in the past that have fallen off due to injuries get rebooked here. The heavyweight Cyril Gane, Alexander Volkov, a rematch. Is that fight going to look different? Although Volkov has grown, developed, and put together a bit of momentum in this division, stylistically, it's as tough a fight as it's ever been. Cyril Gane, with his movement, his range management, is an absolute nightmare for Volkov. Another one, Aljamain Sterling, Movsar Evloev. On the other hand, this fight is a real toss-em-up, I think. Sterling, in his debut at 45, looked amazing. It looked like, this is the right weight class for him now. The punch he took off O'Malley, although it was a really clean counter shot, would he have gotten dropped from that punch if he wasn't cutting that much weight? That's the question, you know. His grappling, his control, his ability to be funky, the funk master, mix it all up, is what makes him so dangerous. And I think he's going to be able to employ that in this matchup as well. Evloev is a lot more conventional, although he is very, very good. You know, the grappling might sort of cancel itself out a bit, but grappling wise, I can see Sterling having more danger there. Even if he's in a, you know, on the bottom positions, he's seen to have crazy submission ability and threat from there as well. Whereas Evloev, you know, likes to bank control and bank rounds. So that could be a really, really dangerous thing for him to do in this matchup. We'll have to see. In a fight that, I don't know if I can speak for everyone else, but I really don't need to see Nick Diaz versus Vicente Luque. This fight fell off, you know, months ago, and they've rebooked it. Nick Diaz must be really hungry for a fight. We saw him against Robbie Lawler in his comeback fight, and although it was fun and vintage to see Nick Diaz back in the octagon, how much the skills have degraded was, you know, evident to see. And against a guy, although Luque, his skills as well, he's nowhere near what he used to be. He has a lot more fight in him left than Nick Diaz does. So, unfortunate matchmaking, I think. How Nick Diaz is still in the UFC is beyond me. His name, his legacy, we're all going to tune in to watch that guy fight. So, let's all pray that Nick Diaz can get the Stockton slaps going. Bang, bang, and land some clean shit and get Luque out of there. Could you imagine if he stops Luque? That would be absolutely incredible. Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes, a fight which, you know, Anthony Smith at this point is mega washed, and we thought the same about Reyes, but he looked pretty good in his comeback fight, you know, against not the best opposition, and I wouldn't really trust his chin still, but you know, this fight is a bit of a soft landing. I don't think Lionheart's, you know, like I said, got much left in him. So this is a very winnable fight for Dominic Reyes. And again, I'm a fan. I'm glad to see him back regardless of what's happened in the past. It's good to see Dominic Reyes back in the winning circle. So the UFC keeps throwing us incredible fights. This one is really special. Shavkat Rhakmonov, Belal Muhammad, as close, competitive of a fight you could make in the UFC. Belal is going to get slept on again, but remember the name, you know. It's going to be a lot closer than people think. It's going to be a lot closer than people think. The amount of training Belal has done with Khabib and that team has just brought him to another level, not only skill set wise, but self-belief wise. So that is going to be a massive, massive part of this fight. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. If you could like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps me and this channel grow. And for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you, guys. I look forward to talking to you soon.